Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. And on today, which is being recorded a few days before Christmas, you probably listened to this in January. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast a man who typically resides in Canada, but he was just telling me that he spends a few months in Scottsdale, Arizona, because he's a golf addict like I used to be, because he's sitting here wearing the beautiful Callaway shirt. He's fully branded. I didn't even ask John whether you've got a sponsorship from Callaway, but maybe that's another question. But Mr. John Nieuwenburg, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
And you were saying just before that it's about 4 p.m. in Scottsdale. You're
Correct.
up at 6, earning money, doing the coaching calls that we do, and we've got to finish at 5 because your wife's making dinner. There's also a game of American football you need to sit down and watch. But it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, John. And for people that listen to this, you're the founder and business coach at W5 Business Coaching. You're
Correct.
a TEDx speaker.
Okay.
You have been in senior executive roles for a number of years, most notably as president and CEO of BC Liquor Stores. And you're just telling me that you say it's like a $4 billion organization with 4,000 full-time employees now?
$3 billion in
3 billion.
sales,
Yeah.
4,000 full-time equivalents in 200 locations.
Wow, that is a big business, a big business.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But since 2004, though, you've been a coach. So I want to
Right.
delve into your background and delve into this because this is a really interesting conversation we're about to have. Can you tell us what got you into sales in the first place? What led you to become president of BC Liquor Stores? But I'm also really interested in you making the transition in 2004 to doing what you do today.
Yeah, all of that are great questions. So before I joined the BC Liquor Store as its president, I started as a sales guy in a national menswear retailer in Canada. Over 17 years, I lived in a bunch of different places in Canada. Eventually, I was an executive in head office. And after about 5 years of living in Toronto, I decided I wanted to get back to the West Coast, and I got myself headhunted. I was recruited to become the president. The other thing, just as a bit of context, I'm the eldest of 8 children, so you can imagine
Wow.
you get cast in a certain role early in life. Hardwired to be a teacher, and I knew that in high school, but that meant wearing a Harris tweed coat with elbow patches, that bureaucratic style. But to kind of close the loop, in the early 80s, I learned something called the Socratic method of leadership. So Socrates had it the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And
Yeah.
essentially, that's what I do as a coach. And I've been practicing that style of leadership since about that time. And all of that kind of came full circle when I woke up one day and found myself as a coach. And I had this epiphany that, oh my gosh, I've always been a coach.
Yeah.
And connected some dots. And some of those dots is what I just shared with you in the last few minutes.
That's amazing. And when you look back, the lessons that you learned through working did you actually work as a tailor, or were you working in a tailor's, so selling the suits and so forth, or did you have
So
some
the
technical
name of the
elements to that?
business was Tip Top Tailors, but it really is a retail business.
Yeah.
We sold men's clothing, sportswear, everything it takes to
Yeah.
get fitted out, and did that for 17 years. And the transition to the BC Liquor Stores was again more retail, retail business. But at that point, I wasn't directly in sales, but more as strategic kind of leader. And then you're selling ideas and points of view and dreams and direction and that kind of thing. So you're selling, but it's no longer goods and services.
Well, it's really interesting you say that. And you mentioned being the eldest of 8 children and having to be the teacher, almost having to be the leader of that group or the tribe, if you like, and probably learning that early on. How much of that did shape your ability to be effective, not just with the tailor, but also transitioning into BC liquor stores? Do you think that the origins of what you do now in terms of being that coach using the Socrates method was founded in that, or did it start with the upbringing of being the eldest of eight?
I think all these things tied together. There were
Yeah.
dots that connected, that there's a through line that you can only see in reverse, starting with I'm the eldest of eight. At the time, I didn't think of it as selling or leadership. It was kind of like responsibility that was imposed or expected on you.
Mm.
Uh, my brothers and sisters might not agree with that perspective, but that's how it felt to me at the time, and that's what matters as far as this conversation is concerned. Yeah,
Man, I can just, and just as a side note, I can imagine how big Christmas would be with so many people, people everywhere.
yeah. Well, my parents said, well, they now have 13 grandchildren, so they've enjoyed a lot of success that way.
Love it, love it. So let's talk about. I'd love to talk about just before we chat into what you do now in terms of coaching entrepreneurs and businesses and so forth. As the role of president and CEO of BC Liquor Stores, what were some of the challenges that you had to face in a business that is retail? I don't know. Would you call it a commodity product, liquor, or was it how do you create differentiation and how did you build? Because this is going to segue into business owners that you work with today in terms of how do we differentiate in the marketplace and how do we make ourselves different? What were some of
Yeah.
the lessons that you learned there through that process?
So let me give you a bit more context. Uh, the BC Liquor Stores is a crown corporation, which you probably have some of in Australia. And what that means, it was a government-owned commercial enterprise. And and for historic reasons, beverage alcohol is sold through controlled retailers throughout each of the provinces has that.
Yeah.
It started off because of prohibition and the desire to control, but over time, I'll say this quietly, but the primary reason it exists today is that of the 3 billion, 1 billion of that is a transfer to the treasury.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
One third net goes to the treasury in support of the government's budget. And I
Yeah.
was recruited because I had this commercial retail experience, and government wanted to get someone who had that perspective and help modernize, if I can put it that way, or more
Mm.
commercialize
Yeah.
the retail experience to give customers more of what they come to expect from retail experiences in other locations, other types of businesses.
And was that a challenge in itself, being a government enterprise, having to deal with, I don't know, red tape, bureaucracy? Were there challenges that perhaps looking back with the government sets of rules, regulations made it a little bit more difficult as compared to other retailers, not so much in the liquor industry, that they had full, I guess, creative license to go to the market and create certain things? Was that something
Yeah,
that you had
so
to grapple with?
that's a very good insight, Darren. Yeah, so notionally, I was there to serve social policy and serve government's wishes in terms of how beverage alcohol was treated, but the real agenda was to create a commercially, sensible business that produced revenue for the government. And so
Mm.
those two things are obviously, and to some extent, in conflict.
Yeah.
And so that was actually the hardest part of the whole thing, is how to manage those two agendas. They both existed, they both were legitimate, but they're at conflict with tension with each other, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is quite interesting and I would say quite unique in for most businesses that you wouldn't be dealing well we deal with governments here because of all the things we've got tax regulations all that sort of stuff but not as if the government has a controlling interest in the actual business itself which I
Yeah,
could understand be quite challenging.
yeah. That you've got a very good sense of it. I'm being diplomatic here, you could probably tell.
Well, yes. And saying I'm saying hello to all of our government friends as well. People who are working in government. Merry Christmas to them. So let's talk then. In 2004, you started your business, W5 Business Coaching. Is that that's when you started? Just double check here.
Yeah,
That's when you started.
2004. Yeah.
2004. So was there a catalyst moment that said, "Oh, you know what? I've been literally coaching my entire business career. So why don't I go and do this and have a bigger impact across a wider audience?" Or was it something that was just organic that you kind of drifted into?
I stumbled into it, to be honest with you. I got
Okay.
to a place where I wanted to do my own thing and row my own canoe and be responsible for no one but myself. And so I started casting about. And um, for a while, I did a lot of retail consulting. And what that generally meant is I'd have a single client and there'd be a project around sales training or
Yep.
some project that was related to retail, and that project would be 3 or 6 months. And after about 6 months, the project would come to its natural conclusion, and then your nose had hit your face because I'd been so busy with that client that I wasn't out getting my next client, and
Yep.
so it was a really bad business model. And then I stumbled into coaching and realized, oh, I could have, in my case, I have 30 clients that I meet with weekly, and if I lost 5 clients in a single month, it would be tragic, but it wouldn't be catastrophic. It wouldn't change
Yep.
how I live my life. And so what I realized is, A, I was better equipped. That was more naturally a better fit for me, and it was a far better business model than
Mm.
what I've been doing. And so that really was the compelling reason. It is a big shift to going from being thinking about a commercial enterprise of about 3 billion to working with, first of all, your own business, but also the businesses I work with, typically are about 1 million or 2 or maybe three
Yep.
million in sales, and so very, very, very different
Yeah.
issues, things on their plate, problems they're trying to solve, and so that was a shift in culture and perspective that
Mm.
was very hard actually in the beginning as you try to live through the lens of a guy who, started a plumber business and got one truck and then two and then three and now five, and he's pulling his hair out because he doesn't know how to solve the problems he's facing. That's a very different set of problems.
Yeah, and you're looking at it, and then through a lens of, hey, I've been dealing with a $3 billion organization, and it's like, hang on, you don't think you got no problem, mate? What are you thinking
Well,
about?
they do have problems. They're very different than the ones
They're
that
just different.
yeah, yeah.
And that's the challenge. So if you think about because I is it something like 300 or 400 businesses now that you've been working with and helping change the way they do business, giving them back time, putting systems in place to make them
Yeah.
more not
So
slaves to the business, if you like.
that's a good way to put it. I've worked with 450 clients to date. Um, the problems they're all facing has to do with time, team, or money. So business owners are saying things, I've got too much to do. I can't get everything done. If I don't do it, it won't get done. That's very common. Team is about hiring. It's very difficult to get good team members to get the culture you want, to get
Yeah.
people to do work at the quality, at the level you need.
Yeah.
And money is both having proper financials, reporting, a KPI, dashboard, a way to measure results. And the other side of money is I want better sales and marketing because I want more sales. I want more money in the business. And so
Yeah.
the clients I'm working with are complaining about one or almost always all three of those things.
So we'll probably talk about all three of them. I'd like to ask you the question across those 450 clients, is there one consistent theme that you could put a line through all of them that they all tend to have to grapple with, particularly as they grow in the early phases of their business that you help with, even based on your experience running such a big organization?
The the thing that the biggest challenge they have is around what job they have. And what I mean by that is they started as I work primarily with tradespeople, so they're electricians and plumbers and HVAC and home services.
Yeah.
And I work with people who are professionals, so they're lawyers and accountants and health practitioners. They sound like they're very different, but what they have in common is they're very good at a trade, very good at a profession, not very good at business. And so they go into business because they want to be their own boss. And then they come to discover just because you're a good lawyer doesn't mean you know anything or even any good at business. And so that's the
Yeah.
first realization is that, it takes 7 years to become a lawyer. Well, how much business training did you get?
Yeah.
Maybe an hour? Maybe. And so that's the gap that I help them figure out. And so they start often as a technician owner. They're an owner in name only. It's their name on the side of the truck, but they're still the guy with the tools, and they've got a couple of helpers, and
Yeah.
and so the hard thing is to change their perspective from being the guy on the tools to being the guy who is the leader of the guys doing the work on the tools, and that transition is a very, very difficult one and that mindset issue is often the underpinning. Or I'll put it a different way, lots of business owners think they need help with the business, but the truth about business coaching is all business coaching is personal coaching in disguise.
It's funny you say that. When I did my coaching diploma many years ago, one of our mentors was talking about executive coaching, and he would say, "You know what? Executive coaching is simply life coaching with a bigger price tag."
Well, that's a great way yeah, there's more value to be realized when you're working with business owners
That's
than you
it.
might with someone who's got a job somewhere.
That's it.
But the things that need to be addressed or developed are often the same thing. Or another way I frame that up is if the owner wants a better business, first the business needs a better owner.
That's right. And so the owner, get out of your way. Get out of your own way.
Well, yeah, well, start thinking of yourself as a business owner. So,
Yeah.
tell me about delegation.
Well, it's an interesting thing because you talked about technician to business owner is a difficult transition for many business owners to make, and I draw the parallel with in sales teams and people listen to this who are in sales who move from being an individual contributor into a sales leader. Guess what? They're not given the training or the transition plan either.
And
They say, "Well, you've been a great technician, go and be a leader."
my experience is often the best salespeople aren't very good leaders and should not be the sales leader. They're
Yeah,
often sort of second tier salespeople that don't produce at the same results, but they're better leaders, better teachers, better communicators, and they
yeah,
make better. But often the person doing the promoting thinks, I'm just going to take my best sales guy and
mm,
make him the boss now. And well, that guy doesn't know how to talk about sales, and he can't describe, he can't teach, he can't communicate. He knows what he does, and they
yeah.
often do that on instinct or just intuition or talent. But can they translate that to the next guy? And no, they don't. And it
No.
seems like you have that experience as well.
Yeah, and it's often, and I often see that it's very rare that a great salesperson automatically becomes a great sales leader. There are exceptions to that rule, and we talked before we press record on the four A's in sales, and one of one of the most important ones, not that there's, is attitude. And if you've got a sales leader that their attitude and the intention they have is to help sales teams and help salespeople improve, not become the hero, then the attitude is a lot more conducive to being able to teach the skills and the characteristics required to be a great leader. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking as I'm talking that the I guess the transition that you help business owners go through from being a technician to now being an owner of that business, the role needs to be different, right? So how do we, and I'd love your thoughts on practical ways that you help people go from being that on the tools, the expert in the trade to now being, I have to be, I guess, the purveyor or the conductor of the experts who are in the trade because that gives me scale and gives me leverage.
So let me answer that question this way. How often is the owner of a McDonald's restaurant required to be in the restaurant?
Very, very seldom. In fact, most of them are not even in there. They might come in, well, just talking locally where I live, maybe, I don't know, once a fortnight, once a month, once a week, depending on whether they're social or not, I guess.
So that's the point, is as much or as little as they'd like.
Yeah.
And what makes that possible? Well, they've made, in theory at least, they've made the transition from being a technician owner to an operator owner to a leader owner to an investor owner.
Yeah.
So in McDonald's, you can be the investor owner and you don't know anything about how to make French
Yep.
fries,
Yep.
right? Now, so the hard thing for people to get is that getting a business to that state is a three-legged stool. So the first leg of the stool is systems run the business, people run the systems, you lead your people. So that's the first thing, Mr. Business Owner, your job is to embrace and implement systems that your people deploy to deliver the promise. It's if people run the business rises and falls on the quality of the people. If
Yeah.
systems run the business, that's the backbone, and then people can be taught that system if they come and go.
Mm.
So let me give you the continue this McDonald's thing. How do they get those French fries to taste the same in your town or mine? The fries are made by a 16-year-old, and the parents of the 16-year-old can't get him or her to clean their bedroom. How do they do that? They have great systems. This is the recipe. I can teach a 16-year-old how to do it. So that's the first leg. The second leg is about 85% of what happens in a business ought to be a routine. Here's the
Mm.
system, here's the process, here's how we do it. About 15% of the time, stuff happens. So one day, we run out of potatoes, 10 o'clock at night. Darren's getting a phone call. Hey, we run out of potatoes. What do we do? And we figure out a solution in that emergency kind of mode. And then the
Yep.
third leg of the stool is we never look for a people solution. We look for a system solution. So the question the next day is, what would the system have to be so everybody would know what to do when we run out of potatoes?
Yeah.
If you start with that framework in mind, you can then turn any business into approximately what they have at McDonald's. Now, some of the tradespeople here, or some of the people on this call will say, well, I'm an electrician, I make kitchen cabinets, I'm not making fries. You're right, you're not making fries. So
Mm.
here's the thing, if you're a general contractor, every house is different, but you're not making up your system and how you do the process and how to produce a great house. That is duplicable, or you're doing that same process in this house, this kitchen, this house, this kitchen. So the product is customized, but the
Mm.
process is systematized. And that's the
Mm.
hard thing for people to get, is that, yeah, the product can be different every time, but the method to get that has to be reproducible time and again.
I love that. And this is why I mean great business people will almost document everything they do so they can write down a process so they can have an opportunity to systemize that process because if and the other big question I'm going to ask you as well is the business owner shouldn't be the one having to do everything because they eventually become the bottleneck. So if they can think about what's the system that I use to do this and how can I put it down on paper that anybody can follow, then it means that I've now released my time to go and focus on other things, which is probably growing the business, doing the
Yeah,
marketing, pressing the flesh, if you like. So, but a lot of people don't look at that. And even in sales, they think, well, we'll just go out and make more calls, have more meetings. No, no. What's the process you go through? How do you systemize it? And if you follow the
exactly.
system, then the system can be replicated.
Exactly right. So there's a couple of points I want to talk about there. So one of the things that I'm going to use a word here. One of the things I'd ask a business owner to think about is tell me what's on your oh shit list. What's that? Well, tell me about all the things that you have to do every week, that every time you think about having to do payroll or
Yeah.
receivables or another quote, you say to yourself in some fashion, oh shit, I have to. Well, that's a clue. The clue is you shouldn't do that work because you can teach someone to do that work for 20 bucks an hour. And
Yeah.
what does that give you? It gives you your life back, or it gives you the opportunity to do something that produces two, three, $500 an hour.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
part one. Part two, the reframe I'd like to suggest is that the owner is not the person who writes the SOP. The owner provides a set of instruction, a set of directions, a set of guide, and the person who's about to do the work has to write the SOP. Why?
Yeah.
Because as soon as that person writes the SOP, they actually imprint, they actually get the learning, because it takes effort to figure out what
Yeah.
it. Number one. Number two is when you're asked that person, how do we make fries? We don't have to debate it anymore. It's in writing.
Mm.
We have a contract. Number
Yeah.
three is if you do the SOP correctly, you could probably give it to any reasonably skilled person without a lot of training, and they'd be able to reproduce the work again. So
Mm.
everything that's on your 5 to 7 hours worth of work each week that you say to yourself, oh shit, someone else can do that work better than you. I don't mean as good, I mean
Mm.
better than you.
Yeah.
If you do the things we're talking about here.
I love that. I love that. And I was going to ask you, how many challenges do you get faced with business owners that are running the HVAC or a trade that say, you don't understand. I have to do it because it's my business and all it falls on me. And if I don't get it done, it won't get done properly, etc., etc. In other words, how hard is it for some of these guys to let go so that they've got somebody within the business that can write the SOP to free them up and I guess give trust in the people that are in the business doing the work.
Yeah, so a lot of business owners confuse delegation with abdication.
Mm.
And so what they think they're doing is, I don't want to delegate because I would lose control. And if that's how you think about delegating, you're not thinking of it correctly. What you're actually thinking is abdication. I just give it to them and they
Yeah.
do it. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm afraid to even look because it might be scary. Well, that's not how delegation works. Delegation means that you're giving an appropriate level of authority and autonomy and a responsibility um, related to the level of experience and judgment and practice that person has had. And over time, as they
Mm.
get better at it and you deliver training and coaching, eventually you get to a place where, on a delegation scale, they're at a level 9 out of 10. They're
Yeah.
largely taking care of it, and they'll come and talk to you if there's an exception. And
Yeah.
so, we uh, one of the difficulties is delegation is an art. It's a skill unto itself. Not, just like selling is an art and a skill unto itself, and people don't recognize that it's actually something you can learn how to do. The better
Yeah.
you become at it, the key to success in business is to have leverage. And leverage means doing more with less. One of the greatest forms of leverage is people, right? How do they get those French fries? They can get a 16-year-old. Well, then what you're saying is you don't know how to get leverage by helping others figure out how to do what you need them to do to give
Yeah.
them the coaching, leadership, guidance, and supervision. And that's the hard thing. I mean, what did they learn how to do? I learned how to practice law. Where did they learn delegation? They don't, they can barely spell it, let alone know how to do it.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it, John? Because as you rightly said, these guys maybe spend 5, 6, 7 years in university, get a qualification to be the technician, but they don't necessarily have the practical skills on how to have a decent conversation, how to delegate, how to run a business, how to do a profit and loss statement, how to take care of tax and so forth. So there's a huge skill set. And even talking to sales professionals, it's very rare, if at all, that they've got institutions around the world that tell people how to sell.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly
just
right.
just go sell it because it's all about the product.
Well, they assume that it's just something you're either gifted with or not. And what I've come to understand is I wasn't always a good salesperson.
Yeah,
When I first started, I was not a good
yeah.
salesperson, but over 40 years and a lot of training and a lot of experience, a lot of at bats, I'm now pretty good. But I didn't start off that way.
No, but it also goes so far as to say, my personal belief is sales is the ultimate form of service, and you've got to be a good problem solver, which means you've got to be really curious. You've got to be a type of person who's looking for opportunities to serve others, and is done for the position of helping another business or another human being, not for the self gain. Which means you've got to have all the skills we're talking about. You've got to be able to put some systems in place. You've got to know how to delegate. You've got to know how to communicate.
Yeah.
You've got to know how to listen.
So, Darren, I've probably asked 1,000 people, I'm going to say 2,000, to answer this question. What are the first three words that come to mind for you when I say the word salesperson? What do you think the typical responses are to that of the kind of business owners I'm talking about? About
Oh,
two-thirds of them are going to say something with entirely negative connotations. They're
yes.
pushy, they're salesy, they're not trustworthy. And
Correct.
if you hold that belief to be true, if that's what you think selling is, then you're a salesperson, Ms. Business Owner. What do you think your subconscious is saying to you as you're out there selling and your subconscious is saying, I don't like who I am right now? How do you think that's going to work? And so they equate selling with some kind of manipulative or something I do to someone. And as long as you hold that to be true, you won't like yourself. And what
Yeah.
you've said is no, no, selling is something I do for someone. Service
Correct.
leadership, service selling. I'm here to help you make the best decision in your best interest. Now,
Yeah.
I'm expert in what I'm selling, but I'm not going to tell you what the right solution is. I'm going to help you figure it out.
Correct.
And that shift turns selling into a gift. I'm here to give you something. What am I going to give you? The right answer for the set of problems you have as you deem right to you, not my agenda, your agenda. Now I'm preaching to the choir here.
No,
But
keep preaching, brother. Keep preaching.
but that shift alone, if you embrace that shift, will change how you think about selling, and in fact, by itself, will make you a better salesperson.
And this is what's really, really important, not just for salespeople and sales leaders, but for business people out there who are running their own show, whether it be a professional, a lawyer, a marketing person, whether it's a person who's a tradie, a kitchen cabinet maker, electrician, plumber, HVAC. It's if you understand that you're there to serve the community, you serve others, and give them the opportunity to make an educated buying decision. My job is done. I'm not here to convert you because when you think about it, you go to a doctor, the doctor's there to diagnose and provide you with a
Exactly.
solution. Ultimately, as the patient, you will determine whether you want to take that solution or not. But if it's good for your health, you put trust in that doctor, they're going to look after your best interests. So why do we not think like that as a business owner, right? Because I'm here to
Well,
diagnose a problem.
there's a lot of cliches. There's a lot of well-known bad examples. There's a lot of media, a lot of movies, and
Yeah,
cast selling in some way as a negative thing. But
yeah,
um, I'm going to say if you hold that to be true, it's kind of a lazy way to think about selling.
100%. Now here's a question for you in terms of the 450 businesses you've been working with and clients you've had. If you were to do a straw poll of them, how many of those businesses would have a big bank of repeat customers or referral customers that have kept coming back to them or referred others to them because of how they were of service to them?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a kind of an element of marketing that your current customer is your best next customer, and if you go with that philosophy, or put a different way, how big would your business be if you still were doing business with everyone you've ever done business with? Why don't we
Yeah.
start with that as a premise? What would have to be true for that to be possible? Now, it's
Mm,
not practically speaking entirely possible, but the principle of that is definitely possible.
it is. And the reason I asked that question is because if you think about it, part of my philosophy is that sale actually doesn't begin until after the sale is made. And you
Right.
mentioned before asking the question of lots of people what they think about sales people and sales. Most people, quote unquote, have a negative connotation towards it because we've all had an experience where somebody was trying to push something that we didn't want and didn't need, but we had there was a live customer in front of them, so they had maybe they're under pressure from their manager, get numbers in, whatever. But if we can remove the need to have the perfect outcome, and that is, I'm here to serve you. I'm going to give you a solution. Now, if you take that solution, great. As soon as that solution is done, as soon as that transaction is done, that's when the relationship continues and that's when the sale actually begins. Because what happens after the sale is really important. And that's where you're going to have people say,
Absolutely.
oh, this is not a transaction. You're actually, so I've got a business owner that has provided me a solution and they're still contactable and they're still coming
Yeah.
back and seeing how the experience was. That's very
Yeah.
unusual.
Yeah. So one of the things I like to ask is what's the difference between a customer and a client? A customer is a transaction, a client is a relationship. Which one of those two do you want? A transaction with a client and, we're done, we're finished, see you later.
Yeah,
Even McDonald's can think of what they have as a relationship with their clients
yeah,
because they lots of them buy nearly every day in the shops, right? So
They do.
if you think of it as a transaction, you'll conduct yourself differently than if you think of it as a relationship.
And if you've got clients, and coming back to what we talked about before in terms of if you've got systems in place that are duplicatable, replicatable, can be leveraged, that enhances the customer experience because they get a consistent experience, which then enhances the ability to come back. And there's where you have even McDonald's not have customers, they've got clients that keep
Yeah,
coming back and keep coming back and keep coming
yeah.
back.
What's the definition of trust? Well, it's knowing what I can reasonably expect from you.
Mm,
And so if you'll have a client, if they know what that experience is going to be like when they do business with you, and if they can trust that to be true, that's how
yeah,
you'll continue the relationship.
love that. Love that. Now, John, I wanted to pivot a little bit, and that is talk about the quality of the people, because people listening to this are obviously either in businesses that are under a growth phase or expected to grow, particularly as we move into 2026. And businesses can only grow with the right systems in place and certainly good people in place. Um, what sort of words of advice or guidance do you give business owners when it comes to talent acquisition? And
Yeah,
rather than telling them what they should be looking for, how do you set them up with, I guess, the mindset and the thought process to identify talent, in particularly in a marketplace that perhaps there's, well, with a lot of millennials, they're not necessarily in for the long haul, are
yeah. Well, the first thing I would say to a business owner is, do you do recruiting or do you do hiring? And but as you think about that question, when you think of sports teams, do they recruit or hire? They recruit.
they?
How far in
Recruit.
advance are they recruiting? How much effort do they put into identifying the right candidate? Now, of that, Mr. Business Owner, how much effort does the business put in acquiring customers,
Mm,
clients? A lot. How much effort do you put into acquiring great people
yeah.
on the side of my desk when there's an emergency, when there's a crisis? And how good are you going to be at hiring when uh, getting the right person means that you're not working Saturday night. You're going to
Yeah.
be making some choices you shouldn't. So I learned a really good lesson in the 70s. I was a store manager of the menswear retailer I was telling you about. And I lived in a place called Calgary. And uh, in that decade, Calgary grew from about 100 to 500,000 people. And that's because everybody was moving to get in the oil business. It was just booming and growing like
Yeah.
crazy. So nobody was ever moving to Calgary to work in retail. But one of the practices I had is my boss, the local regional manager, and I would tour the mall where I was the manager of our local store. And my job was to point out the two best salespeople that weren't yet working for me. So what
They
does that
weren't
mean?
yet working for you.
Well, I was
Well,
peeking around the corners. I was watching what they did and how they did it in the other stores. I'd make a point to bump into them at lunchtime. And so you want to be recruiting, identifying the next great salesperson before you actually need it.
mm,
So that if something were to happen, you have five people in mind that you can, so that if you have leverage. Right now, what happens is if you lose your best salesperson, that person has more options than you do. They can say,
mm,
no, I'm gone. And guess what? That's a crisis for you. Well, how do
yeah.
you change that? Or you have a poor performer and
Mm,
you've coached, you've trained, you've helped, and they're not getting any better. But you're stuck because if I fire this person, I got nothing. Well, how do
mm,
you change that? Well, you got to have the options. You have to have leverage. Well, how do you get that? Well, name me five people that you'd like to hire that you, if you could, if you had an opening, who are the five people you'd like to approach? Go
yeah.
solve that problem, and you won't have any trouble telling that guy, it's time where we should part. Or if
Yeah.
someone were to say, give me, a big raise or exercise some leverage against you, you're kind of like, oh my gosh. And so start recruiting before the need becomes evident. What do they
Mm.
say? When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. Well,
Today.
go look for that tree 20 years ago. It'll be less of a problem for you.
Well, it's
So,
it's so it's so true though because we talk in Australia we talk about having bench strength, and that is
yes,
exactly that, right? You may not necessarily, and I've even had some companies hire people because they were the best person available and they didn't want to not have access to them. So they almost created a position for them because they wanted them in the organization. So and you're right, you said there's sports teams that do this 2, 3 years out, and that's their planning, and they know there's probably some cycles they have to go through because they've built that relationship. When the opportunity presents, people on the outside say, "Wow, how did that person end up there?" Well, they've been having
Well,
conversations for 2, 3 years.
yeah, exactly right. And if I ask you, Mr. Business Owner, how much effort do you put into acquiring customers? How much effort do you put into that? And by that measure, what fraction of that are you attracting the quality of people you need in order to do well? It almost always is 5% of the other. Well, can you see what the problem is? You got
Yeah.
this high wire act and you got all these customers and you're not doing anything to make sure this thing gets balanced out and is almost always in balance.
Mm.
Recruit before you need it is
Yeah.
the short version. Now, there's a lot of other things. Um, the heart of your question is how do you identify great salespeople? And the reference, the book I like to refer to is How to Hire and Train Your Next Best Salesperson. Greenberg is the author. And in it, he says that great salespeople have a combination of five characteristics. And two of them, in my opinion, are the most important.
Hmm.
So one of them is empathy, and the other one is ego drive. So empathy is the ability to, communicate to get where make sure the other person feels heard, all those things. And ego drive, I don't mean big watching, big ring. I'm talking about
Fast cars.
persistence, resilience, drive,
Yeah.
competitiveness, desire to achieve. Now, let me ask
Mhm.
you a question. If you've got a salesperson with high ego drive and low empathy, what kind of salesperson is that?
Well, we're going to have a salesperson that's going to burn bridges, and you're going to have a trail of destruction.
And yeah, exactly. The kind we don't like. Exactly right. Now let's think of the reverse: high empathy, low ego drive. What kind of
Well, they're going to have
salesperson is
great
that?
relationships, but no cash, no
Hungry
sales,
kids. And
and
so
angry kids.
the best salespeople know how to manage or balance those two characteristics. They know how to lead a sales conversation, and they know how to make a client, a customer, feel like they've been understood.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
those two things are the underpinning of what makes a great salesperson.
And I love that because whether you're carrying a bag in an organization as a salesperson or whether you're running a business, you've no business happens until a sale is made.
Absolutely.
So you've got to have, and often I say to sales teams and business owners, sometimes you've got to ask the direct question, hey, would you like to buy Mr. and Mrs. Customer? Right? Don't just assume that through the process, the customer knows exactly what the next step in the process is. You've got to outline what that process is, and often you've got to ask the question.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think salespeople should become better at doing is understanding buying intent or buying signals. The client will tell you when it's time to ask that question if you pay attention.
Yeah,
They're
that's
leaning
it.
in, they're asking leading questions, and they want to be asked. Hey, should
Yeah,
we talk about what it looked like to work together? Should we talk
yeah,
about what the next step would be? Should we talk about whether delivery should be today or tomorrow?
yeah.
And if you time that right, and your client will show you, in my case, they kind of lean in a little bit. They kind of change their body language a little bit. They look at you a little differently. And so, how does it work?
Yeah,
How do you work with your clients? They just bought. Let me help
yeah,
them figure out how to buy.
that's
So,
it.
great salespeople are great at understanding body language because it communicates well in advance when the buyer's ready for, and in fact wants that question because they're looking over the edge of the cliff. It's a little scary to take the next step themselves. They need help. Ask
Yes,
them. They're
they want to
happy
be
to
led.
step forward with you. Yes, they want to be led.
They
Definitely.
are.
And I mean that in a very positive way. In the
Oh,
same
absolutely.
way, I go see a doctor. I'm not there to tell the doctor what to do. Doctor, what do I need?
Well, that's the other thing because the doctor is considered to be the expert. So you expect the expert has your best interests at heart, so they're going to do what's right for you. That's what we've got
Exactly.
to start thinking more and more about as a business owner, as a salesperson, certainly as a
Yeah.
sales leader. My job is to give you the opportunity. Do you want to solve this problem? Do you need to solve this problem? Is this a now problem? Is it a next year problem? Whatever the answer is, that's okay. I'll still be here. But if it's a now problem, I'll give you the opportunity to do it now. And this is how we do
Yeah.
it.
In my world, a lot of times, the gift we give our client, our prospect, is it's we give them the space, and often for the very first time, they actually name and label the problem. Up
Mm,
until then, it's this thing rolling around in their head, and it's causing them stress. And how many hours? I'll just role play something because it's relevant. So, how many hours are you working? I'm working like 70 hours a week. Wow, man,
mm.
what's that like? Not very good. Hey, well, let me ask you, if you could, what would you like to work? I'd like to work 30. Oh my gosh, if you could get 40 hours back, what would you do with it? I'd love to see one of my kids' games. Oh, that'd be so much fun. Let me ask you, how many games have you gone to? You haven't gone to any? Oh my gosh. You must be asking yourself, how you doing as a dad? Now,
Yeah.
I've led a conversation that actually for the lots of business owners, it's the first time they've actually recognized it.
Yes.
That they've actually said it, and then they say to them, I don't want to pay that price anymore.
Yeah.
I need help figuring this out. And that's the gift we actually, in this little example I just gave you,
Mm.
gave them the opportunity to recognize what the problem is. It's not that they're working 70 hours a week, it's they're not there for their kids. That's the problem they want to solve.
And when you actually look at the reason they probably started the business in the first place was to give them the flexibility and the freedom to be able to do those things. And now they can't because
Isn't that the
they're a
paradox?
slave to the business.
That's often what happens. Yeah, often what happens.
So this has been a great conversation, John. Looking into 2026, how do you see the market in 2026? More of the same? Do you come up against things around AI? What's if you got your crystal ball out and said 2026 is going to be a year of, what are you seeing in 2026 in your world?
I've come to the place where I think AI is a fantastic accelerator of coaching. And so when I first started to use it, I was a little bit afraid. It was like, what am I doing? Like, they don't need me anymore. And I was sharing my screen with a client. We were working through a problem, and I kind of
Yeah,
said that out loud. And the client said, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, I
yeah,
need your help to figure that out. And in the past, I might have said to a business owner, hey, you need to get a job description for your plant owner. And I'd
yeah,
give him a form, and a week come by, and it wouldn't be very good. It's the first time he's ever done one. It wouldn't be great. A month later, it's still not very good. Well, heck, now, job title, description, website, and AI will produce that job description 80% good in about 5 minutes. And
yeah.
instead of taking a month to get something done, we get it done in about 5 minutes, and the guy has to tweak and finesse and personalize. And so I see AI is raising the game, not
Mm.
in competition, but actually an accelerator of coaching. And so I'm excited about that. There are some people who are still kind of trying to figure it out, and I don't need you. I can go do AI myself. And yeah, if you believe that's true, great. But there's a reason there's some value in the fact that I have some gray hair and some judgment and some experience, and it can help you kind of stay, with some bumpers so that you're not off wandering into areas that aren't really that relevant to you or that helpful for you. So,
I
um,
agree. I agree. I think at the end
um,
of the day, our AI, if we're not using AI, will be replaced by people who are using it really effectively. But at the end of the
exactly
day,
right.
the differentiation will still be the human connection because people still crave to be connected to people.
That's in fact the distinction. That's the point of differentiation. It's what I do is all about relationships, and AI
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
uh, entirely replace that.
No, no, absolutely. So embrace AI. For people listening to this, embrace it. Use it to your advantage.
Train left the station. Get on the train because
That's
it's
right.
leaving whether you
Hurry
want to
up
or
and jump
not.
on.
Exactly.
So, John, I know you're about to jump into your tribal colors. As we finish this up, for people who wanted to connect with you and also learn more about what you do, where's the best place for them to go?
I'm easy to find. The business is W5 coaching, and the W5 is relevant because Socrates had it. The best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And how do you do that? You ask good questions. And what are the 5 core questions? Who, what, when, where, why? W5 coaching. I'm easy to find on the web, and John at W5 coaching will get you in my inbox.
Awesome, awesome. I'll put that on the in the show notes, and I'll encourage people to reach out and connect with you. So, hey John, thank you so much coming in from Arizona. I know it's been a long day for you. Enjoy dinner with your wife and enjoy the game, and have a great Christmas and New Year. And thanks again for being a great guest on the podcast.
Darren, it's been a real pleasure to have this conversation with you. So I'm blessed to have the opportunity to chat with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, John. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.